I am here with my cousin Rishi, but in this family, we don't regard each other as cousins. We are brothers because we came from a common heritage. There was a man named Behareesingh who in 1869 left Kashi, well, just outside of Kashi. It's a village called Garkara, 28 kilometers outside of Kashi. And he left there to come to the Caribbean. He arrived here on November the 8th, 1869. He was an indentured laborer and he worked on the estates for 5 years. When he finished in 1874, he started a small little parlor, as we call it, which was a small little shop in Tunapuna, because he was contracted to the Makoya estate. And in 10 years later, in 1884, he sent £4, 19 shillings, and 6 pence to his brother in India, in Bharat Desh, which is how we were able to find him and to find the people. So, having done the research and found these people, we are all proud descendants of this Bihari family. From 1845, when we first came as indentured laborers, to 1917, when the last stopped, it was 147,000 plus Indians who came to the Caribbean to work on the sugar estates. And that is our story. And our family's story is a lot more detailed, as Rishi will tell about us.
And this is why we're here this evening. We're here with a few family members, descendants of Behareesingh, and we're discussing and trying to get some stories, particularly from the elder persons, and I'm saying elder being over 80, elder persons, so that the younger generations today, and not only the generations of today, the future generations that at this point have not yet been born, that they can look at these people and try to get an understanding of the culture and what has molded these generations that have come since Behareesingh. What has molded us? Where did we come from? So the idea is to get a much better understanding of the culture, of the principles and morals of which we were all brought up via one of family ties, principles of education, of improvement, self-improvement, being better for ourselves. These are the things, and sacrifice. A lot of our forefathers have sacrificed greatly for us, and I think we need to appreciate that and let the younger generations understand it. So I want to say thanks to Shiva for this afternoon.
And it's a time before we had electricity. It's a time before we had pipe water supply. It's a time before we had refrigeration. A time before we had milk package, we only had cows. It's a time before all of that. It's a time before we had only water from wells, and that is what we want our descendants to understand.
Mm-hmm. So going forward, we will see a few interviews and conversations with a few of the elders tonight, and you will see that we will post on this site. But in addition to that, going forward, I want to encourage everyone out there who has access to an elder within the family to listen to their stories. Take your cell phone and film it. I want to thank Shiva Parasram in particular today for doing this with us in a professional manner with the cameras. And Shiva is willing and stand by for anyone who wants his assistance. He has said he will help us. But if not, do it with a cell phone camera, upload it to this. We want to share these stories, not just for the children of today, but for the future children. We want to have these stories documented for them.
And we are speaking about a time before cell phones. We are speaking about a time before phones. Mm. We're speaking about a time before refrigeration. We're speaking about a time when, in order to keep meat, to have meat when the family was coming, you had to have a goat tied to a tree because you didn't know when they were coming, because they had no phone to tell you. So you had to wait until they arrive and then kill the goat after their arrival, and skin it and clean it and so on. I'm speaking from a Kshatri perspective, of course not a Brahmin perspective where they're mostly vegetarian. But the fact is, there were adjustments we all had to make life possible.
So after high school, you said that you started to teach at Five Rivers Hindu.
That's correct.
So you're teaching a standard 2 class at Five Rivers Hindu School, and then I understand you then went on to university. How you managed to know which university and how you heard about this university?
Okay, after teaching in Five Rivers for about 3.5 years or so, I went on to Winnipeg. But how I went to Winnipeg is that I had a friend who we used to go to school, to high school together, and he went to Winnipeg. And I didn't know where to go. So I just went and wrote Winnipeg and got admitted. So once I got that, of course at that time there was no university in Trinidad. In Trinidad there was the ICTA, the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture. That's all we had here. But so it wasn't a degreed school. You could get a degree, I suppose, in ICTA, but a BSc and other subjects wasn't available here. So you had to go abroad, even to get a first degree. So I went, and I went to Winnipeg simply because my friend was there, and I thought I should go there. I didn't know anywhere else to go.
So you wrote the university, applied to them, and they said, yes, you accepted and you could come.
Yeah.
And then you're taking a flight now to go to this unknown place, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And because in those days, obviously, no internet, no television, so you don't really know what this place is. You're going to an unknown place, much like, I must say, like Behareesingh, who would have left India and came to Trinidad. He had no idea where he was going, so you had to buy a ticket now.
Yeah. Well, before that, I had another problem. When I started to make arrangements to go to Winnipeg, I started late for whatever reason. I always put it off. Every year I'm putting it off and putting it off. And this year when I decided, I started late. And in those days, to get your visa, your Canadian visa, you had to do your medicals down here, do your X-ray, everything, and send up the X-ray and the X-ray report up to Canada to get it approved. And in Canada, you will get your visa sent back here. That will take 2 weeks, they told us. I had 3 days to go to school. I started on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I now didn't know what to do. So they told me at the embassy down here in Trinidad that you have a choice. You can send up the X-ray. Sorry, you can take up the X-ray. But if the doctor up there, when he sees you and he says that you're not medically fit, he will have to send you back down to Trinidad. So are you willing to do that? So I said, well, I'll take a chance. So I went to buy the ticket. And when I went to buy the ticket, the travel agent wouldn't sell me the ticket because I had enough money to just buy a one-way. So they say I have to buy a return ticket because if anything is wrong up there, who's going to pay for the ticket to come back down? So I went to an uncle in town, and he lent me the remaining money, the rest of the money, to buy a return ticket. I went to Dip Mamu, and he gave me the money. Of course, I think my father paid him back. But when I got that, I got the ticket and everything, and that was a Thursday, everything straightened out. And I remember going up to my aunt, my poor in Sandy Grande in Manzalina, to tell them that I was leaving, because we were very close to them. And I went up there to tell her that I was leaving, and I said, and when she asked me, when you're leaving, why do you spend some time, when you're leaving? I said, tomorrow. So I'm telling her Thursday, and I'm leaving Friday morning. I got to the airport on Friday morning, and I'm telling you, there was one contingent of people from the village to see me off. Like a whole busload of people came. They came from all over, friends, family, everything. I must be one of the few or very few first set of people leaving the village to go abroad. And everybody, and I have a picture of that somewhere, if you see people. So I got onto the plane.
It's a direct flight from Trinidad to...
No, it went to Puerto Rico. Okay. And when we landed in Puerto Rico, it was scary. You see so many police fellas with big guns in the airport. We didn't have that in Trinidad. Real scary, military men all over the place. Anyway, you got into Puerto Rico, spent a couple hours, and then flew an Eastern Airlines plane to Toronto. On that plane, well, of course, there was no jets in those days. All was...
Everything is propeller plane.
Propeller planes. So we were going up, and that plane was noisy, it was shaky, it was scary. You felt like that you're either like your bird wings were moving. This is how it was. And I remember they offered me something to eat. They gave me a sandwich, a tuna sandwich. And I didn't know what that was. So I didn't know if to eat it or not. So I asked what this is, what tuna is. And they said to me it was fish. So I said, okay, I'll have it. And it tasted nice.
Because you're not eating beef or pork.
I'm not eating beef or pork. So I didn't know what I was eating.
So first time you hear about tuna?
First time I hear about a tuna. So I ate that. Got into Toronto. And I have my x-ray with me. And it's big and broad. And when we got off the plane, everybody is going in a line in one direction. They pulled me off and put me in another line. By myself. There was no line, I'm going. Got into an office. The doctor looked at it and cleared it. He says everything is okay. Stamped my passport, give me a visa, and he wished me, and it was my birthday, he wished me a happy birthday. So I arrived...
20th?
Yeah, September 20th, 58.
58? Yeah. Okay.
Is when I got there. So I had got another plane now to go down to Winnipeg from Toronto. This is 1600 miles away. So I got onto that aircraft, and that aircraft seems to me to have been going directly or going on to British Columbia to Vancouver, but I'm not sure. But when the stewardess came around, she asked a lady next to me where she was going, and she said, Winnipeg. She asked me where I was going, and I said, Winnipeg. Well, I latched on to that lady from then on, asking all sorts of questions.
Somebody who lived in Winnipeg?
Who lived in Winnipeg, apparently. Okay. So I asked her where you were, asking questions like where the university is, because nobody's going to meet me. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going to the university. So she said...
Wait, your plan when you... Did you have a plan that when you land there, nobody, you don't know where you're going, you just know you're going to the university?
Well, my plan was to take a taxi straight to the university.
Okay, so
that was the plan.
There, you'll take a taxi.
But this lady says, don't, well, but I'm talking too much. I know I was telling her that I want to get to the university and how to get there. And she says, don't worry, my father is coming for me when this flight lands, so we'll take you down. I said, all right. Okay. So she pretty well shut me up. So after about 15-20 minutes before we arrived in Winnipeg, she said to me, you know, this flight is arriving late and my father wouldn't come for me. We'll have to take a taxi. And I am saying, you are landing from a plane and nobody going to meet you? And here I left over 100 people in Piaco seeing me off. This seems like a wrong side world. I couldn't understand that. Anyway, I got into the taxi with her and she's going and she reached a spot, what is called Pembina Highway and Corridon Avenue, along that spot. And she said, you could get off here and you could take the bus to the university. So I said, what? She said, you take the bus and the bus will go straight into the university. So I got off with my suitcase and all my coat that I took and everything.
And this was a Friday night?
No, this was Saturday morning now.
Okay.
This is Saturday morning. Okay. And school is opening Monday. Okay. Yeah. So I go down there, so Saturday. So when she did, I offered to pay the taxi. She said, no, she will pay the taxi. So I'm waiting there standing for this university bus. And a bus arrives. It says university on it. And a Canadian fella came up at the same time, just before the bus arrived. And he said, hey, where are you from, Trinidad? So I said, yes. So he seems to have known some Trinidad people. So he said, where are you going to, university? So I said, yes. He says, okay, I'll look after you, come on. When the bus came, we went into the bus. And he paid, I think it's 25 cents in the bus. The bus had no conductor. In those days, we had conductors in our buses in Trinidad. So he paid for me, and he says, don't worry, and everything. So he paid in the bus. So we're going down in the bus now, and it's a good ride, maybe 20 minutes. And I'm looking at the whole houses, looking at the plants. I'm seeing cucumbers, these greenish type cucumbers we see sometimes. You're seeing big tomatoes. And I'm thinking, this is a temperate country. How are they growing cucumbers and tomatoes? And I can't understand all of this kind of thing. Those kinds of things have a tropical climate. Anyway, we reached into the campus. We reached the bus road right into it and stopped. And that was the end it goes. To come out the bus now, this man paid money again.
Extra money.
He had to pay. He already paid to come in the bus. Now he paid to come out the bus. So what kind of country is this in my mind? You're paying money to go in the bus, you're paying the money to come out the bus. I can't understand this at all. But afterwards, you pass a zone. It was a zone that where you had to cross. And if you cross,
License was up to a point, and then you had to pay.
and then you pay a little extra 10 cents. Okay. So I remained there, got registered that day, get all my subjects sorted out and everything.
But where you staying?
Then he asked me, where you staying? I said, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to stay tonight. He says, all right, I'll find you a place. So he took me up to the YMCA. All right. When we got in there, it was $10 for a room. Just a room with just a bed, nothing else. And maybe a little cupboard or something. And the washroom and bathroom was down the road in the corridor. A big, yeah, shed. There are about 3 or 4 washrooms and showers and all that kind of thing. And so I got in there before I got there, from the university, he said to a fella, hey, we have a guy from Trinidad here. Man, let's take him down to the Y. This guy come out, one big American car, throw my suitcase in the trunk, and that's how we shop at the Y. Okay. And he said to me, all right, I'll see you tonight, and we'll go for dinner.
But, okay.
Yeah, so when he said, we'll go for dinner tonight. So it was about 4 o'clock when I got in. So I thought, well, and he said, I'll pick you up at 8 o'clock. So he said, all right. So when that happened, at 4 o'clock, I thought I'll take a little rest. So I lie down because I was traveling all night, all day, I didn't know what to do. I lie down. With all my clothes, I didn't change up too much. So it was bright daylight. When I got up, it was 6 o'clock. And I thought it was 6 o'clock Sunday morning. But in fact, it turned out to be 6 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So when I got up at 6 o'clock, and I look out, the place is getting dark now. So I say, well, it's morning. Trinidad is morning and it's dark for 6 o'clock. So I put on my pajamas to go and sleep. Because this man told me he come in 8 o'clock last night and he didn't show up. So I fell asleep. Prompt at 8 o'clock, I heard a banging on the door. When I opened the door, this man is dressed up in a tie and a jacket. And I didn't let him go. I said, but you're a hell of a man. You told me you come in last night and you didn't show up. This time, it's 6 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock, Saturday night, the correct time. Yeah. And I'm thinking, it's 8 o'clock Sunday morning. Yeah. So I am all in a real mess. I couldn't understand what's going on. He said, what's wrong with you? It's still Saturday night, you know. Oh.
But so after the Y, you stayed there for a couple of days, and then you stayed at different places you would have boarded, and how you managed for food? Because I know you were not at that time, because I know you're still up to now not able to cook.
No, I can't cook. I never learned. But, well, I used to go and eat something anywhere while I was at Y, because there's no food, and there's a little cafeteria there. So you eat something and drink something and survived. But then the same guy, Bruce Nicholson was his name, was very helpful to me, I must admit. And he said to me, I will have to find you a place. So he's helping me. I must say that he did a good job. So I'll find a place for you. And he found a place on a place called Balmoral, place called 82 Balmoral. And it was a 3-storied building, big old stone type building. And I was on the top floor. But my room was facing the street. And there were 2 other rooms where there was 2 other tenants. One was a lawyer and one was a woman who was a secretary of something. And it had a bathroom and a stove and a fridge, and we shared that. And then he said to me, just across the street, there was an old lady, two old ladies, two sisters I think they were, who served dinner.
Okay, so
And if you could go there and pay for that. So I went over and made arrangements, and I used to get dinners. And in that same house was a prof living there. He used to teach geography at the university, but he was an English one. So he used to take me to school. So I had a ride now to go to school. He didn't bring me back in afternoons because his times varied, my time varied. And he would go to school, but he was a really absent-minded professor. But in that place serving dinner, there was a lawyer that comes for dinner, and it was prompt at 6 o'clock. I was there, the prof was there, there was a Frenchman there, a university student doing engineering, about 5 or 6 of us, I forget. And we used to meet there for dinner. And it was quite nice, quite jovial to get meeting all these people every day. The lawyer used to bring, every evening he used to pass in the grocery and buy a piece of cheese. And he'd buy a piece of different cheese every day. And for the whole year, you eat a piece of cheese, a little piece you share it, but you eat all types of cheese, and it was really fantastic. Some of them you didn't like, but you eat it.
Another question, while you were in Canada for that 4 years that you stayed up there, right? How you communicated with your parents, with people back here?
Well, in those days, there were phones. We had a phone, but we couldn't communicate. It just never worked for me. So I used to write. And I would write a letter almost every 10 days. Ma used to write, as soon as I got a letter, I would reply to it. And I had a system that on my desk, I would write little points that what Ma would want to see. Yeah. And the first thing I do when I open my letter, I would reply to all the questions they asked. So I replied to that, 14 days, and my letter is ready. Within a quick, it didn't take me more than 5-6 minutes to write my letter.
So
next morning, about 10 a day. So I'll send it back right away. And she'd reply, send it back, and it went on like that for 5 years.
More or less every 10 days you have some sort of communication.
Yeah. And I tell you, when you are abroad by yourself, you need that. You miss people. You wouldn't realize what that means when you're abroad.
And we know you met some other Trinidadians when you were in Winnipeg. One in particular, of course, was my mother, who was there. So that was the most important Trinidadian that you meet up there. And then you came back to Trinidad in what year?
Well, Vida was getting married in 1961. I was in third year at that point. And Pa and they said, come down for the wedding. And I decided, well, this was a good plan to come down for the wedding. But I had a car, I had a 52 Chev, and this is 1961, so it was 9 years old. I decided that I will drive that car all the way to Florida.
From Winnipeg?
From Winnipeg. So I got 3 other people. We had a Sri Lankan guy with me, a Canadian fella, me, and a Canadian girl, 4 of us. And we started off in Winnipeg, went south into the US, and drove east to Toronto. And we would camp out at nights, and sometimes it's cold, we'll sleep in the car. You have to save money. So we do that. Okay, every other night we found a motel, and a motel was $10 a night. But that was plenty of money.
Yeah.
So we'd have a motel, and the three guys would stay in one motel, and she didn't want to stay in the motel with us, so she'd take her own, and we'd keep going. You had campsites, we'll buy food and cook, and it was coming down. We got to Toronto, spent a few days, then we got to New York, and the girl and the Sri Lankan fella went off to Halifax. And Larry, Canadian guy, we stayed with his grandmother in New York. We spent, I don't know, about 10 days in New York. We were together with the 4 of us, and we went and toured the UN building. We toured Empire State Building. We toured everything. We did the trip around Manhattan Island. We did all sorts of things. Went down into Soho in the real bad areas. We were all students, so we did things like that. When they left, Larry and I remember we used to take the subway because we weren't driving the car in New York. And we had to take a shuttle every day, Larry and I. And every day we got lost. We just couldn't find that shuttle. We don't know. Every time you make an entrance, a different entrance. And we had to ask and ask and ask. So I came down, we went through Washington. We went through where our minister right now is in, it's pronounced St. Augustine. Not like he's in St. Augustine, like St. Augustine. But it's here, we passed through there. And Larry and I had a big game there, a golf game down there in St. Augustine. And we bet for a drink of grapefruit juice. Who could drink, and you could buy grapefruit, they were selling grapefruit juice. You could drink all you want. But it was sour, so it didn't make sense. So Larry and I went down. When we reached Savannah, Georgia, it was a small town. I went and I asked, we were in a little hotel, motel type of thing. And I asked the lady there at the desk, what do you have in this town for us to see? She says, nothing much in this town. But Gregory Peck, who is a screen star, and Robert Mitchum are doing a film. So they're doing a film in a park down there. Well, of course, we went to look for them. So when I saw Robert Mitchum in the park sitting on a chair, Gregory Peck on the other side filming with a bicycle. They rode in this bicycle and everything. And I'm telling you, they did it about 10 times to get the right shot that they want. When I saw Robert Mitchum there, I told my friend Larry, I am setting my camera, and I set it, and I said, I'm giving it to you. I am going to ask him for permission to take a picture. And regardless of what he says to me, you shoot. So I set him up. So I went and asked Robert Mitchum. I said, sir, you know, I know who you are, but I would like to take a picture with you. And he said, sure, you go right ahead, man. Then I posed, and I have a picture with Robert Mitchum. Well, that was the highlight of that little town. And then we went on, straight on to Florida, to Miami.
And when you came back to Trinidad, I know you were teaching at Hillview for a little while.
No, that is, so let me tell you what happened after that. When I went back up in 1961, I went back up in September or thereabouts to go to school again. And there within that 3 months to Christmas, I met your mother.
Oh, okay.
I was going in a sequence. I met your mother. She was at the hospital in Winnipeg. It was called Winnipeg General Hospital. It's called something else now. And she was training there for X-ray. So somehow we met at a function, and we talked, and then I got to find out she was Uncle Bal's wife's sister, and which I didn't know, but I knew Uncle Bal's wife and all that. And well, of course, you hook up, and from there it went. And the next year, in 1962, Ma and Pa came up to Winnipeg.
Okay, so because by now you tell them in your tent.
Well, now I tell them in that letter, yeah, and go to Bal and make arrangement.
So they come up to see who the girl is.
Well, they know not that had passed that already. They came to do the engagement.
Okay.
So we got engaged in the summer of that year, and when I got there, they saw everything, they spent a long time with us and everything. And I had a big apartment where I was staying with this same fella from Sri Lanka. We were staying in this apartment for the summer. And there was a fella from West Africa, from Nigeria, from Ghana, who was my very good friend. The three of us, we had a big apartment with 3 big bedrooms. And we held the engagement right there in that thing.
So coming back in 1963.
Well, before that, after that, I went to teach in Canada.
Okay.
Right? I got an assignment teaching in the country about 90 miles outside of Winnipeg now.
Okay.
Right? And I went up there to teach. And our friend Elaine and her husband Don got a job at the same school. And I got a job at the same school. And they had to move up because they had a child. Okay. So I boarded with them. Okay. Because as you say, I can't cook up to now. I learned to cook yet. I could boil water and things, but nothing much more than that. And after that, from there, we came home to Trinidad.
They came home and got married, and then you were teaching at Hillview for a little while.
Right.
Before you went on to your other job.
Yeah. What happened after we got married, I was going back to Canada was my plan. I wanted to go to West Africa, but nobody said I should go there, so I was planning to go back to Canada, making all the arrangements. And somebody told me that Dr. Maharaj of Hillview College, the principal, wanted to see me. So I went on a Saturday. That is the same day in 1963, you had a big hurricane, Flora. Flora damaged a lot more in Tobago than they damaged down here. And on the interview, it was raining heavily and everything. And he told me to come out and start Monday. So I had a job right there waiting for me. So I remained at Hillview for 1 year teaching chemistry. And in that time, I met a lot of people, like Professor Behareesingh was one of my students in that school for a while, and a number of other people, outstanding people that I are still holding very high professions in this country. And I remained there for 1 year. But before the year could finish, I got a job in the heavy industry in Point Lisas at what is called Federation Chemicals, now called FedChem, now called Yara. It was called Hydro Agri after, and now Yara. They offered me a job, and during the Easter holidays, they wanted me to come in for training, and I went for training. And then they told me that I have to come out on May 4th. I must come out, because the person I'm going to replace is going on a training somewhere in the States, in Connecticut in the States, and I have to hold on. I wasn't finished with the school. The children were still there. And they couldn't find, and they have exams coming. I was teaching Form 5, and I couldn't let them go. I didn't know what to do. So I arranged that every Saturday morning, and sometimes it was Saturday afternoons, that I used to come into that school for the 6 weeks that was remaining to teach those guys. And I came there on my own and taught them. Until the exam came, and then continued. Because down there wanted me, and they decided that if I didn't come, I wouldn't get the job. And it was a better paying job and everything. So I decided to go. But I sacrificed my time for the school at Hillview.